Ask Reddit. What is your most traumatic experience with a teacher? I'm 65, and I still remember when I was 6 and the nun told me to wash my desk and then wring out the sponge, and when I squeezed it instead of twisting it, told the whole class that my mother was a bad mother because she had not taught me correctly. I knew if I protested that my mom was a good mom I would be punished. It still bothers me that I didn't stand up for her. Why did that nun have to put me in that position? Goddamit. Technically it was the vice principal, but the day my brother died, apparently he thought it would be a good idea to walk in on story time. The teacher was reading to the class, set me on his lap and tell me in front of everyone that my brother committed suicide. Dude, what a freak. I'm so sorry this happened to you. The girls in our elementary school were given proto-sex ed before the boys. The basic puberty stuff, your body is starting to change, you might develop breasts, sweating, all that stuff. They made a hooagay stupid deal about keeping it quiet. It's the girls' little secret. Don't go spreading it around school. It only occurs to me now that that is kinda dangerous in the wider scope of things. Anyway, my best friend was a boy and naturally, I skipped right off to tell him why suddenly half the class had an assembly all by themselves. My teacher heard about it, got me alone, grabbed me by both arms and shook me. Keep your mouth shut. She was my favorite teacher up till then. Totally a great thing to teach a kid. We had the same talk. They gave us holders for pads but told us to tell boys they were pencil holders. So I said that when asked. I was teased for a long time for saying that it was a pencil holder. MFW, all these schools get sex ed, and here's my school where the closest we got to it was the biology teacher screaming at us to not laugh, smirk or giggle when the reproductive system chapter was going on. I said that the dot over the I or J is called a tittle. She said it's not a tittle, it's a dot, and with that, she accused me of being impertinent. I read titty. LMAO, me too. My 4th grade teacher had a reputation for making one boy in her class an unpopular scapegoat each year. Lucky me. In previous years I'd been just another kid in the playground, but within 2 months the other kids wouldn't play with me during recess. One day I refused to go outside for recess. She asked why, and I foolishly told her that the other kids didn't like me. When they came back in, she marched me to the front of the class, and asked for a show of hands, who didn't like me. 4th grade kids mostly did what 4th grade kids do. I broke down that night and told my mom what had happened and what had been going on all along. She marched into school the next day, got a meeting that included the principal, and tore the teacher a new asshole. I was still stuck in that class, but the teacher moved on to a new victim. Funny thing how self-esteem influences academic performance. My school used to give us a Stanford Bean IQ test every year. My score dropped 10 points from 3rd to 4th grade, then rose 20 points in 5th grade when I had a nurturing teacher. If you are still alive, frick you, Mrs. Erickson. For an Erickson, she should really try to understand Erickson's theory of development. That would have reminded her that accomplishing things and receiving praise helps students grow. When I was in 2nd grade, my mom died. When I was in 3rd grade, the evil witch of a teacher held me back from recess one day for something. While it was just us in the room, she asked if I went to church. I said no. She then told me that I was going to hell and would never see my mom again. I hated that bitch. This thread is filling me with rage towards some teachers. Came here for the light childhood embarrassment, left with a general sense of outrage for the human race. One time I was on my period and I asked the teacher to go to the bathroom multiple times. She refused to let me go. Eventually I stained my uniform and the chair. I was so embarrassed that I started crying. When my mother found out, she made the school fire that motherfricker. Good going, Ma, glad she stood up for you. I don't understand why any teacher thinks they have the right to regulate the student's bodily functions, and I am an 11-year veteran high school teacher. I get that some kids are just taking the hall pass to get out of class, blah blah, but as long as they're back in about 5 minutes or so, I don't care what they do. School schedule is set up to be so ridiculous. Of course they need a break. Not so traumatic, but was a very bad experience for many. My science teacher subtracted 3 points of everyone's grades because he had a bad day. Half of my friends didn't make it to the next year. So when I was in kindergarten, I didn't make it to the bathroom in time and wet myself. Went to the nurse's office, got new clothes, but instead of panties I had to wear a pull-up. Not a big deal. I guess it was a school policy for kids my age, I don't really know. When I get back to my class, my teacher loudly says, "Oh good, the baby is finally back," or something like that. She also knew about the policy and asked if I was wearing a diaper so every other student could hear. I was 5 and felt a ton of shame and humiliated. I started crying and trying to get out of school a lot because of it. My teacher often referred to me as a baby for the rest of the year. Also, she would constantly ask if I needed to potty or if I was wearing a diaper, like I was a toddler or something. The horrifying thing is that you probably didn't have the social or verbal skills to explain this to your parents and understand it's something that could be stopped. What a horrible teacher. Yep, it didn't help that I've always had a weak bladder, so accidents weren't that uncommon. Parents didn't think much of it. Not exactly me, but had a teacher yell at one of my friends for not doing his homework and give him a Saturday school, even though his parents had died the night before. Frick that teacher. In the ass. With a tennis racket. Sideways. On their left side. And salt it. Used to love math and science, until I had a teacher in 6th grade who would bully, mock, and do everything in his power to embarrass me in front of the entire class. I lost all love I had for school after that class. Frick you, Mr. Bright. He doesn't live up to his name, sadly. Yeah, no one is going to be taking Mr. Bright's side. My favorite teacher in middle school was arrested for child pornography. He wasn't my favorite after that. He also wasn't my teacher after that. Why is this so common? Every person I have met had told me that at some point in the school history, some teacher was fired for either CP or going after female students. Even in my own school. Though it does remind me of the time where we had a supply teacher in our class that would kind of just ogle directly at any girl in front of him. When he wasn't doing that, he would then just deadpan stare at the person next to me until another girl walked past him. That was the only time I saw that teacher. In the 8th grade, I had a book report to do for 4 books all due on the same day that was way too overwhelming to do at the time. I had some serious domestic violence going on at home between my parents. Spent all my time taking care of my younger brother, cleaning up the house, cooking, and crying from all the stress. It was worth 20% of my grade, and the day before it was due, I broke down and told my teacher everything, down to the time when my brother bled from his head from being hit by my dad, to the most recent attempted murder upon my mom. If I had even received a B, my dad would have beat the shit out of my mom for giving birth to a stupid kid. He called child services, my parents received the call, and gave me the silent treatment for 3 days. They told him I lied just to get out of the assignment. The social worker told my teacher what my parents said and made the rest of my year a living hell. He treated me with such pettiness after that and threatened to call my parents whenever I had either spoken too loud in class, or whenever I was unparticipative in gym. He called my parents for my bad behavior. Home life got significantly harder after that, and my parents told my entire family continuously how stupid I was for telling him. They laughed at me when I cried or got upset about it. Years later, after repressing everything, I was diagnosed with severe PTSD from childhood trauma as a witness and victim of domestic violence, attempted murder thrice, and it took me 3 years in therapy to get over it. It was quick, but it was tough as it was during my university years, and I ended up having to take an extra year of school to catch up mentally. I was ready to speak up about my struggles again when I couldn't function anymore, as the traumatic flashbacks occurred twice a week for hours at a time. I couldn't do a single thing except tremble and live in fear. I was 18 by the time I was ready to reach out for help. Fuck you, Mr. Gentle, your name is creepy as fuck, and I really do wonder if being a petty 33-year-old to a 12-year-old child made your quality of life better. I hope that there's proper procedures put in place to protect children from such experiences. I am a teacher, and I've had students in similar situations. It makes me cry to think he was either stupid enough to believe your parents or horrible enough not to care. I want to tear down the entire CPS system because they are so useless in every case I've seen. I'm glad you were able to eventually get help. Please continue to do so, and do some research on mindfulness as a way to deal with childhood trauma. It can really help your mind to heal, which can greatly affect your health. Mine is more of a light-hearted, traumatic. In 4th grade, I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I had gotten the, at the time, new 3 Egyptian god cards. Well, I was caught playing with them during class, and my teacher took them from me and threw them out. I was devastated after all the packs opened and cards traded to acquire them. I never forgave her. Did they ever end up being worth anything before all the reprint boxes? I would have loved to see her face if she found out they were worth some coin. This is like when Weevil threw Yugi's Exodia cards into the ocean. I was in the 4th grade. Found a dry erase marker on the playground. I wrote my initials on the tire swing. Classmate rats me out. I get yelled at for like 20 minutes straight about vandalism of school property. She starts going off about how it's the first step to becoming a criminal. Being a little kid, this scared the shit out of me. It was probably another 2 years before I believed that I wasn't going to become a criminal as an adult. You wrote something on a swing that could easily be erased. Yes, officer, this comment right here. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Another monster off the streets.